Chinese are directly, threatening the US. We as Indians talk about being the center of the world or being a global economy, being a great military power. But even in the Southeast Asian nations, China has been favored in place of India. And till the 90s or the early 2000s, we were the big boys in the South Asia. But now China has also ventured in South Asia. And we're doing this economic blockading in Nepal or the situation in Bangladesh now. Political Islam has arrived in Bangladesh. And China has huge investments in Myanmar, Bangladesh. Sri Lanka, they have Hambantota Port. In Nepal, they built their police academy, which India had promised but didn't act upon it. CPEC is there. CPEC goes straight through POK, which is land claimed by India. Don't we see a string of pearls around India? How do we, if it's true, then how do we manage to tackle this? That coupled with our own social harmony. I'll not say it's in disarray, but it has been shaken up. So yeah, how do we deal with all of that?
Yeah, of course. I think first let's go to Southeast Asia. So as far as Southeast Asia is concerned, so China has certain advantage there. One, of course, massive Chinese diaspora. Almost 65% of Southeast Asian countries, so they comprise of Chinese diaspora. So that is big advantage for China there. And it translates into the kind of like a cultural connection you have and the kind of interconnectedness you have. So therefore, ease of doing business in these countries, so it becomes much easier. So why Taiwanese, they're not investing that much in India? Because ease of doing business, because of these factors, right? So these factors are not there, so it becomes a little difficult and they become a little cautious. So maybe in near future, so there would be more investment in it.
ये सब जब है तब China एकदम पीछे पड़ा हुआ Taiwan के. Still Taiwan has more investments in China than India just because of social reasons.
Yeah, I mean social reason also. I think most of the investment happened during the period of equilibrium.
Okay.
When we talked about the period of equilibrium.
Yeah.
Because Taiwan, they thought that this is the nice opportunity, right? And the China was welcoming it with open arms, right? And being, the Chinese, right?
Yeah, being the Chinese.
So they're Taiwanese, they are Chinese after all, right?
Yes.
And there are marriages, between the Chinese and the mainlanders, and more than 200,000 Taiwanese, living in Shanghai alone, and almost, I think, around 400,000, the couples, are there.
That's a huge number.
India and China and Taiwan. So it's a huge number.
And then there is Southeast Asia.
Therefore, I think for economic integration, so these factors are important. So why China could integrate with Southeast Asia so quickly, right? So these were some of the factors. And of course, the economic policies are also important. The kind of incentives are offered by Chinese side, by Southeast Asian countries, and the close proximity also. So these are some of the factors why China has been able to interconnect, with South Asia, irrespective of having these geopolitical problems in South China Sea, right? It has problem with so many countries in Southeast Asia. But then, as I said, that if the investment trade is there, so today, the bilateral trade volume between China and Southeast Asia is more than $1 trillion US.
Yes.
Right? So that subsides these problems. So people say, okay, so let's not pick up the problem.
Huge when it comes to relatively India-China to India-Southeast Asia.
Yeah, for India-China, Southeast Asia, it's not that, Southeast Asia is too far from India. It is our neighbor, right? It borders.
We had cultural ties with them also.
But the problem is that whether we have made these corridors of connectivity or not, right? I think we didn't invest there. So China invested in a huge way.
Why didn't we?
I mean, one is your economic strength is not there. It requires a lot of money, right? And second is, I think, instability, right? Political instability in our Northeast is another reason where, we have not been forthcoming to
embrace our Northeastern brothers and sisters.
Yeah, right. And I think approaches, towards development. So they are also a factor here. If we try to open up Northeast for trade and business because of border sensitive areas and all. So, these are some of the problems. This is exactly why we didn't go for this BCIM. In fact, China incorporated BCIM as one of the corridors, when this Belt and Road Initiative was launched in 2014 from POA Forum. But later on, we expressed our dissatisfaction. One on CPAC, you mentioned, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. And then, this BCIM also, so it just faded away. Otherwise, there would have been, road links, train links between India and China directly through our Northeast. So because of the security related issues and the kind of trust deficit we have with China, so it didn't happen. So these are some of the reasons so why we are still hovering around, $80 billion of trade volume with Southeast Asian countries. And India being a huge power, huge country, huge market, I think we should blame ourselves that we didn't integrate the region, not only our neighborhood, but also our immediate neighborhood, right? So, and then I think China, when it had that economic leverage, technological leverage, it had those policies. Belt and Road Initiative, it's a big project of $1 trillion worth, right? Investment, all over the places.
Because we just don't have that economic strength. Just because of that?
No, I think economic strength will happen. It's not that India is so poor that we cannot build. We are also building infrastructure around the globe, right? But in very, very limited fashion. But I think India's approach, first of all, it should be maybe inward looking. And that's what China did, right?
Okay, we should be inward looking.
First, we should be inward looking.
What do you mean by that?
Inward looking means first you develop yourself, right? You put your house in order first.
Have we been doing that?
I think to some extent we are doing now that, in terms of like the infrastructure, connectivity, right? So that is one of the manifestation.
Sagarmala, Bharatmala.
Yes, Sagarmala, Bharatmala, or various corridors. So we are, and once that is in place, and then it would be easy to, extend these nodes to our neighborhood, right? So that's how Chinese did it. So first they developed a state-of-the-art infrastructure inside their country, and then they connected this node to the neighboring countries, and they benefited from that business model. So I think India should have been doing that. So even if we have not done that, so we should be doing it, and then extending these, nodals in our neighborhood and interconnect. And it is only through these corridors of connectivity that we would be able to integrate the people with us, even if we have the similar cultural backgrounds. But one thing is that I think we have taken our this cultural interconnecting that in the subcontinent for granted, and that has created a lot of problems for us. And second is that the kind of economic integration should have happened, it didn't happen. So I think India should still be doing it. It will augur, good for the neighborhood also. And to large extent, I would say that it would also be able to, respond to the kind of Chinese intervention is there in the neighborhood.
But like you said, we'll start nodding off it to our neighborhood. But China is already in our neighborhood. So, but then again, the question comes. So I think you've pretty well answered my next question. That would have been, how do we find the equilibrium again? So that's the We do that.
Like how do we engage the powers, right? So first the major powers, United States, and then the Russia, which is still a major power, and then China. How do we deal and how we calibrate our policies? So it has to be country specific and it has to be customized. Given our strengths and our leverages, and also the kind of advantages we will have or recoup, from respective major powers. So this is one. And second, of course, we should also be emphasizing on the kind of relationship we will be having with the middle powers, like Japan is there, Korea is there, France is there, Germany is there, and there is a huge room, especially the kind of churning which is going on at this point in time globally. I think India should, take advantage of this churning, that you pull, some of the middle powers closely in the orbit of India, for market, for various technological cooperation, so that, our economic strengths, so they're enhanced. And second part is of this inward looking is like, how do we build social cohesion?
Yeah.
I mean, if you are wanting to, have benign relationship with foreign players, then first you should be having benign relationship with communities inside your country, right? If your country is in disarray, if they're like Syria, like Myanmar, like, various other countries in Middle East. So
or
then,
Bangladesh now.
Yeah, Bangladesh. So then, I mean, the focus of your economic development and your aspirations of wanting to be a great power, I think they are killed instantly. Because the kind of messaging it goes around when you are in chaos, when there is no harmony inside your country, so then it creates, so a lot of problem for you globally. So therefore, I think India need to be, having a sort of like holistic approach. And for that, I think, India should be quickly bringing in uh, 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 a national security strategy. So which will encompass various factors, parameters, from your domestic policy, what kind of domestic policy you should be having, what kind of energy security you should be having, right? What kind of, you can say, the cultural policy you should have, what kind of defense policy you should have. Once you define these parameters, and then once these are being debated, by the academia, by the media people, by social media, then the public, they become informed about these indicators. So these are our goals, these are our objectives of grand strategy. That is how the government should be behaving. And once these parameters are defined, then it becomes extremely difficult for other government, to do away with these.
Now,
right?
media is busy discussing whether Rohit Sharma is fat or not. Oh my! I mean,
Yeah, so I think we should be bringing in national security strategy
in public discourse.
Whether it is our military security, whether it is our
Culture,
culture,
everything.
education. So have these parameters that this is what, whether it is our critical minerals and so on and so forth. I mean, everything would
Everything.
be in one document, right? It's how China brings out these white papers. Even recent white paper on this fentanyl, you must have seen,
Yes.
right? Blaming United States for everything of it. So public becomes informed about your domestic as well as your, foreign policy, and then the government is a little hesitant, so to change these policy parameters overnight, as it happens. Otherwise, this government is having this kind of national security. The other government is having another kind of. So it is a wastage of resources also, and also, it creates a reduplication, so on and so forth. Therefore, people of this country, so they have the right, they should be informed what are policies towards, towards various countries, towards major power, towards global South, per se. So everything would be there in the document.
That's well summed up, sir. I mean, for small political gains, we should not sacrifice our, social harmony. If we dream to become a big power in the world one day, I think that's what.
Yeah. I mean, if you are aspiring big,
China
right?
has done that.
You need to be magnanimous, right? You should be magnanimous with your enemies. You should be magnanimous. First, you should be magnanimous towards your own people, right?
Yes.
And
We should
then to
understand
your
that.
neighbors, and then I think that projects you as
A big power.
big powers.
Don't you think we have been magnanimous to Pakistan for quite a few times, but that has resulted to our own loss? Or have to learn from that too?
No, I don't think we have been magnanimous to Pakistan. I think
It had been given the status of MFN and
that is fine, but Pakistan has its own agenda. I mean, its entire foreign policy is anti-India, right? Magnanimous in the way that trade and people-to-people exchanges they should continue, irrespective of your military standpoint, your maybe
whatever
views and perspective
that you have
on a certain
like you rightly
issues.
mentioned, if we really have people-to-people exchanges with India, Pakistan, India, China, India, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, then a lot of negative connotations in people's or masses' minds will be removed instantly.
I mean, they may not be removed instantly, but then I think it paves the way for better understanding, for better trust between people. And after all, people would like to live in peace and harmony, right?
Why
no
not?
one would like to go to war and conflicts. They are horrible. You have seen in Middle East, right? So conflicts, they're not good. And I think we should learn from history that ultimately everything has to be brought to the negotiating table. So therefore, it is better for our neighbors as well as for ourselves to discuss it calmly on the negotiating table and move forward, as one South Asian community.
Sir, we were talking about Quad to contain China-specific ambitions, but then we talk about nodding off certain benefits to our neighboring countries. Can India afford to do both, or should we focus more on one and then on one? Like, should it be a package deal or a sector-wise focus?
No, I think at this point in time, as Quad is the pillar of the Indo-Pacific strategy, but at the same time, I think it is India which is withholding from making it a military alliance. And that is also when we are keeping in view the Chinese sensitivities, about it. Otherwise, it would have been a military alliance from the day one. So that is one thing. But I think that can go because China is also doing the same thing, right? For example, China has created Pakistan as a pivot. Pivot against whom? Naturally, India, right? So if China has a pivot, to contain India's rise, and then I think we can also have our pivot. To
or are we a pivot? Are we West pivot against China?
No, I'm saying that a Quad as a pivot, right?
Quad is a pivot, right? That's right.
Quad as a pivot, not India as a pivot. I don't think India would be willing to be a pivot, to contain China. But I think if there are certain elements where India can align its interest with some of the major powers, say we have aligned our interest with United States in the Indo-Pacific, being part of the Quad and being part of the IPAC.
BIMSTEC?
BIMSTEC is different. It's not the part of Indo-Pacific strategy. I'm saying the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, right? IPAF. So that is also one of the pillars of Indo-Pacific strategy. So we are there. But again, I think we are retracting a bit because we are not going overboard as far as trade and investment, is concerned. So I hope, at least during this tenure of Prime Minister Modi, so we are part and parcel of various trade agreements, and various FTAs are concluded, so that investment and trade is further. Ultimately, I mean, it is your economy, right?
Yes.
So if
It all comes down to money then, right?
yeah, if your economy is strong, so then your military will be strong, you will be technologically strong. But if your economy is not strong, I think you won't be able. And of course, it will give money to the consumers. Your consumption level will be more, and economy, it will grow.
Sir, is China a communist country in a strict sense? I mean, how did China, saw such an unprecedented rise that India really failed to see that, gog that? I mean, first question is China a communist country in a stricter sense? Second, a lot of people lament that China's rise with regard to its real estate or economic development, it's the credit is given to dictatorship. I know the people who in India claim that have a specific propaganda, but second is that, and third is democracy has been lambasted by certain extremists in India for being the sole reason of India's slow rise. Are these three, accusations correct? And what's the rise, the reason for the rise of China?
No, the first, of course, I don't think China is a communist country. So if you define communism, right, it's a very, very different connotation and definition, and that is true also for socialism. I don't think there is no socialism in China.
There's no socialism in China.
I don't.
Was it
so.
under Mao?
No, because socialism, for example, communism is that each according to one's need, right? And that was being done during Mao's time. But that had been changed when reforms were undertaken. So Chinese, they identified themselves that socialism with Chinese characteristics. So they add this characteristic. But of course, they in order to bring in the market, ultimately one according to need is the ultimate goal of the socialism, right? But then the market, it would be each according to the need of the market.
Yeah,
so if you
exactly.
wanted to consume more, if you have that consumption power, so market allows you to do more.
Produce more, yeah.
So produce more. So that's what exactly has happened in China, and that has, you can say, created massive production capacities in China in the course of time, and it has sort of like unleashed, the kind of productive forces they were never unleashed in China before. So this is one thing, and second, I think, is
the dictatorship thing.
The investment, from Western countries, the technology coming in from the Western countries, and China, providing
fertile ground for that.
Offering various incentives and equities, so on and so forth. So I think, especially in the 90s and 2000, so you will see the outflow of investment, capital, and technologies all converging to China, and as a result, the kind of manufacturing prowess it has become today. So it is the outcome of that. And second, I think, if you say whether China is a dictatorship or not, I think it is being governed by the Communist Party of China. So it is, I would say, so the political totalitarianism. So if you try to identify it from the political science view. But here again, I would say it works very, very differently in China, and which perhaps has got something to do with Chinese historical development. So if I see the 2000 years of Chinese dynastic history, then I think it is not very different from one of those dynasties, right? So where you have a very, very strong center, and then you have a very decentralized periphery. So I think China at this point in time, it is perhaps the extension of that.
The 2000-old system of governance that China had.
So the communist revolution, it is essentially a peasant uprising against a corrupt, KMT
government
in China. So therefore, it depends like how you define it. And China, of course, though they said that they are not a totalitarian society, they are not an authoritarian society. They are they call them whole process democracy. The China call them whole process democracy. 全过程民主 in Chinese they call it. And then of course for that they say that it is the structure of the party which is responsible. For example, you have almost 100 million cadres, Communist Party cadres, all over the places. And then you have the village collectives at the lowest rung of this hierarchy. And there, you can say universal franchise is conducted.
Okay.
So the people, those who are being nominated to these People Congress, right? So they are from the lowest rung, and then from counties and from provinces, and there would be, more than 2,000 delegates. And then from this People's Congress, and then you have these the Central Committee. The Central Committee will have almost again over 350 people. Some are permanent members, some are non-permanent members. And then from Central Committee there would be the Politburo. And Politburo will also be having permanent member and non-permanent members, and it will have the Standing Committee. The Standing Committee will have only these 7 top leaders, and then the General Secretary of the Communist Party. So that's how a sort of like democratic centralism, so they identify it. But nowadays they call it whole process democracy, which works, right? They say that which works. And of course, this is a taunt to democracies like India and maybe the rest of the world that, they don't work. So democracies in other countries where they are in chaos, and they don't have the kind of efficiencies a totalitarian or authoritarian, government or regime they have. But I think as far as India is concerned, democracy, though I would say it to some extent may have compromised our economic growth to a certain extent, but I would say more than that, it depends upon the kind of policies we formulate for our development. I think if there are right policies in place, for example, the way the China formulated policy during the deep globalization, had India formulated similar kind of policies, during the 90s and 2000s, I think the entire picture of India would have been very, very different. And that was the time, when the entire globe, they were talking about liberalization. It was, talking
those
about
10 years.
10, 20 years, I think they were very, very crucial. So we also opened up, but I think problem with us was it was the baggage of socialism or the kind of, ideological binding we had at that point in time, whether it is in the 50s or 60s. And we were at advantageous position than China. during those years. But somehow I think we were...
You mentioned India's per capita GDP was way far ahead of China. It was 296 per capita and India's was 354.
Per capita. Per capita was better. Our foreign exchange reserves were better than China. Until 1991, when I visited China for the first time, we were ahead of them. Our industrialization was in fact better than China.
But we were socialistic then, so how can you blame socialism?
But I think we didn't capitalize on inviting foreign capital in our country. So
we were always skeptical of that due to our notion of colonialism.
I think so. Certain ideological inclination was that. Right, I think so. That was determinant too.
We were the socialism baggage harmed us more than China, who were actually socialists.
Yeah, I think so. I think China learns from its mistake very quickly, and I think in democracy like us, so we don't learn it quickly, and I think that is their advantage also. So they take quick decision, and whereas in India, I think that decision making it takes much longer time. Potential is there. So it's not that India is not growing. It, according to the government, figures. So we are one of the fastest growing economies of the world. We are growing at 6.5%, and by 2027, so we are going to be $5 trillion economy. And
but then the have and have nots.
Yeah, according to some calculation, by 2047, so we would be
Viksit Bharat.
Yeah, we would be Viksit Bharat. So, but it's not bad to aim high, right?
No, of course
not. I think it's a good thinking that we should be, aiming for high growth rate. We should be aiming for higher per capita. We should be aiming for higher GDP. So this is good thinking. I think for that we need to make coordinated and sustainable policies. And some areas which I think they have been translated into reality is, for example, manufacturing of the Apple phones in India, right? China used to mock at us, to be very frank, so Apple will never invest in India. The kind of work culture you have, the kind of infrastructure you have, no company would like to invest in India. But here comes now. The Apple. And within 3 years, I think we are exporting Apple phones worth $15 billion.
So, sir, at one point of time, China just sees US as its enemy. But then again, China also take very diligent notes of what India is doing.
Yeah.
So they do recognize there is some rising power.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, there is a recognition that India is a big power, right?
Or has the potential to become a really big threat to China?
Yes, naturally. I mean, it would be in future. Naturally, there is no question about it. So the way the country rises, the way it behaves, say by 2035, United States would be dislodged by China as the largest economy, right? So the US becomes second, then India becomes third, right, by that time. And then since US is not as big as India, right? So India, if its consumerism and capital is unleashed, so then it is in a different league.
But we have to make sure that the development is at least to some extent equally distributed.
Yeah, say by 47 or say by 50, then we become the second largest economy. So then naturally China will feel threatened.
Then the way two-city described.
Yeah. So that comes then suicide trap at that point in time. So I think it's natural, right, for any rising power or any existing hegemon to feel threatened. And that's how these wars take place. As Graham Allison, so he has said that, out of 16, such war between existing hegemon and the rising power, so 12 have resulted in war, right? Only.
But also, M.K. Gandhi once said that a country which invades other has only done harm to itself.
Yeah, that is also true. I mean, but
It doesn't seem true in case of China, though.
yeah, it depends, right? Internally, what kind of churnings they are going on in China. It has faced many problems internally also. It has, the problems of minorities. The Tibet issue is, one of the, you can say, core interests of China. And there are many core interests. So the list of the core interests keeps on expanding.
Why doesn't India
Xinjiang-
internationalize the Tibet issue?
So that is the, problem of the policy formulation, right?
Okay.
So what kind of policy you are going to formulate, and then pros and cons of those policies.
So, what would a truly cooperative India-China relationship look like, if there is any, scope for that? Is there any realistic path to mutual trust in the near future?
I think we have to be very, very pragmatic. Pragmatic constructivism. I think that is the way out, for India-China cooperation and engagement. But there would be problems, so they are given, because we have many unsettled issues, and both have their own aspirations to be, leading powers. So there would be problems. But I think given the size and scale of the people, their economy, there is still a huge room for India and China to develop together. For example, our agriculture sector is a huge potential in India. And if we can prop up our agriculture sector, say by 4%, by 5%, its contribution of the GDP. I mean, our GDP, it will grow double digits, right? All of a sudden.
Tourism is one.
Tourism, of course, is
We've
one.
been ignoring it.
But tourism is one. I'm saying that the kind of
Cooperation that China and India could have. But like you said, we have our agencies for that.
Yeah.
And if we have to be magnanimous again, right?
Yeah.
Magnanimous.
So we have to, identify the sector, so where we have least security concerns, right? And I think there we can cooperate, and we can unleash the productive forces of our peasants and, enable them to have larger incomes, become, middle class peasants. So that is one sector. And then, of course, as you said, that the people-to-people context, the tourism sector, and the Buddhist corridor is,
Yes, a big thing.
One of the sector which I think we have ignored. We keep on talking about our
cultural heritage,
cultural heritage,
civilizational ties.
we
don't act upon it.
But I think we have to interconnect,
Yes.
right? We have to link, for example, from Nepal to Bodh Gaya to, various other places, all over the places. The way we could interconnect the Hindu, Buddhist corridors. And we have to recognize the fact that in East Asia, Southeast Asia, there are many Buddhist followers.
Yes.
To say that the kind of benign image, peaceful image, which India has, in world, it is primarily because of Buddhism, to be very, very frank, right? I mean, Hinduism is much, much later development, right? So we have…
It is what it is.
Yeah, so So we have been having a dialogue, with these countries by way of Buddhism. So therefore, why not to develop these sites? And it will earn a lot of revenue for government, right? Provided that, basic infrastructure, amenities, hotels, guest house, and the roads, rails, so they are there. And it is good for the inbound tourists also, as it is for the outbound tourists. So therefore, I think we really need to focus on that. So China has done a great thing, as far as connecting these sites, revamping these heritage sites, and investing there. So, and it is the preservation of our heritage also, cultural heritage. And if we want to identify ourselves, as a continuous civilization, which culturally we are,
Yes.
Politically, we may not be, like the China is politically and culturally both, right? But I think India, culturally speaking, intellectually speaking, spiritually speaking, we are a continuous civilization. So, in order to preserve, our this continuity and this kind of civilizational perspective, I think we should be.
But then again comes the question of being inclusive, whether it's with the Vedic past or the Buddhist past or even the Turkic past or the Mughal past.
I mean, it doesn't matter, After all, they have been part and parcel of Indian civilization, right?
Yes, that's
Indian civilization doesn't mean Hindu civilization, it doesn't mean Muslim civilization. It is a mosaic of,
all the
all
civilization.
the components together. They are part of our
We
civilization.
can attract tourists or people from all over the world, whether it's Middle East, whether it's Turkey, whether it's China. And do you think regeneration of these circuits would then lead to fewer military confrontation like we saw in Galwan?
I think it enhances understanding. I said that, not necessarily that it will, cut down on that, but then naturally it, enhances understanding with the two people, and the possibilities become, lesser. So I would say,
But
so I
like you
cannot
said-
rule out the possibility of, happening another.
But
Galwan.
pragmatism says that even if these things happen, these communications should not ignored.
Yeah, they should not be ignored. For example, I would say, Ministry of External Affairs and its Chinese counterparts, so they had envisaged a project in 2013, and I was heading that project. It is called the Mutual Translation of Classics, Modern and Contemporary Works of India and China, which we talked about, because not much knowledge is being produced on China in India by China experts. So this was, a small step to bridge that gap. And the Chinese side, so they're also doing the same thing. There is a professor of Tsinghua University, so he is in charge. So they have finished their project. But here comes the Galwan, and everything comes to a grinding halt. So this project, which is the government-to-government project, it was also sacrificed. And I have written many emails, to various ministries and the bodies, those who are executing. And I have already, finished almost, you can say, 95% of the work.
Wow.
But the government is not responding.
We should learn that.
So this should not happen, So China doesn't stop. So we were saying that, so China didn't stop anything, right? Okay, if you think that the Chinese apps, so they are a threat to our security, it's okay, good, you stop them, right? But not these projects, so which have been signed by the government and, where the people-to-people exchanges, academic exchanges are there, when the production of knowledge, as far as China is concerned, is involved. I think it augurs well for Indian leadership, right? The more they read about China, the more they know about China, the more inquisitive they get about China. And same thing applies to the Chinese government and the people, those who are involved in these kind of projects. But they have long wrapped up the project, but we are still, waiting for a signal from the government.
So the crux of it is like Sun Tzu mentioned in Art of War. If you know yourself and your enemy, then you need not fear the result of any battle. If you know yourself, not the enemy, you have to suffer defeat at every victory.
Yeah, naturally.
And if you don't know any of neither you nor your enemy, you lose every battle.
Yeah, that is the crux of the issue. I think the honors goes to the Sinologists also, and also our government also. We have not been able to, formulate our own China perspective. Yeah, I think this is the question which you asked a while back also, whether we have our own perspective of looking at China, or whether it is the perspective which we have borrowed from the West.
The West, yeah.
Right? I would say most of China experts in India, so they borrowed it from the West because they don't understand Chinese. They don't know how to read and write Chinese. They don't know how to access Chinese sources. They are not in touch with the Chinese, think tanks who formulate or advise government on policy. So therefore, I think in order to have a round China perspective, or rather China policy, so we really need to look China through Indian perspective.
And
so
to
that
all
we should
those who
have-
want to learn Chinese, Professor B.R. Deepak has done a lot of research, and you have your own book.
Oh yeah. I have translated many books. That was one of the area I thought that it is.
It's a void.
It's void.
And I'm
so
going to
I-
use that. I'm going
I
to
try
learn
to-
Chinese from that.
I try to fill in that.
That's why I thought it's.
So, for example, Confucian classics, right? So they were never translated here. China translated, entire
Almost everything.
Everything, right? They translated Ramayana, they translated Mahabharata, they translated Sursagar, they
Vedantic
translated
tradition.
Kavir Granthavali. They translated even English writings in India. The English authors, those who have written in English.
Like the Jungle Book, or okay, the
No,
Indian
I mean
writers.
Indian
Okay,
writers.
okay, yeah.
Like this Anita Desai,
Shashi
Nepal, Shashi Tharoor, Khushwant Singh, those who write in English.
Even the modern Hindi, Mr. Renu, Manishwarat Renu,
All of-
Bhartendu Harishchandra.
Yeah, they have written in Hindi. हिंदी तो उन्होंने
किया
कर ही
ही
लिया है, लेकिन जो हिंदी के अलावा जो अंग्रेजी में लिखते हैं, जो उर्दू में लिखते हैं, जो तमिल में लिखते हैं, so they have done whole work on these.
वो
people.
और सीखना चाह रहे हैं.
Yeah,
हम
yeah.
लोग भाग रहे हैं अपनी ही भाषाओं से.
या तो इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि अगर चीन को हमको जानना है, जैसे चीन की जो साइके है ना, क्या सोचते हैं वो लोग, तो कहाँ से वो ये सब आता है, तो ये सब आता है कि जो उनके जो दर्शन क्या है, उनके जो शास्त्र क्या है, क्या उसका हिंदी में अनुवाद हुआ है कि नहीं
इतिहास क्या है.
हाँ, इतिहास क्या है, और उनके जो अकादमिक जो लोग हैं वो क्या लिखते हैं आजकल, क्या उसकी हिंदी में यहाँ पर कभी चर्चा हुई है या अंग्रेजी में यहाँ भारत में चर्चा हुई है? बिल्कुल नहीं हुई है. तो आई थॉट दैट इज द वॉइड, so I should be filling that up, and I think so far I have translated at least 12 academic works, and the first one was the Confucian classics, 4 books. Confucian and Confucian idea, so they are very, very important because I think it is China's cultural gene. Right? Confucianism in China's cultural gene. We talked about like Taoism also part of it, Buddhism is also part of it, but then the core of China's thinking, China's psyche, it is Confucianism. And that has never been translated in India.
हमने चाणक्य ढंग से पढ़ा है सर, वो तो बहुत प्रैक्टिकल है. हम
So I was the first Indian to translate these 4 books of Confucianism into Hindi. So I thought that let us make it available for the Indian readers. So and now people at least they can read in India. And similarly the academic works, so I've also translated some of them. I have constituted a team of like young scholars, so they help me, and we try to translate.
And what's next? What's coming next from Professor B.R. Deepak?
Basically, a couple of books are coming. So first is my own research on India-China. It is in 2 volumes being brought out by Springer. The title is Rising India and China, a strategic rivalry in the Himalayas and the Indo-Pacific. And I think many of things, so we discussed, they are also from the book. The electronic version is already out, and print version I think is on my way. Hopefully I should be getting in a fortnight or so. And the second volume, I'm going through the proofs, at this point in time. So these 2 volumes are on India and China in English. And apart from these 2 volumes, my Sunday Guardian writings, so they have again been published in a book form. And it is called China in Xi Jinping's New Era. It is China focused on China's internal dynamics, its society, politics, party, so on and so forth. And there is a section on India and China also, but a small section. Apart from these 3 books, 2 of my translations, so they are coming, they are already in the press. One is Tun Huang Art. It would be a part of that civilizational interconnectedness, because Dunhuang was one of the ancient cities, in the oasis in Taklamakan, where all the cultures, they converged. And Indian culture was one of the most prominent, I would say, and in the grottos in Dunhuang, Mokau grottos, so far 492 grottos they have been discovered. They are like about Ajanta and Ellora, cut from the caves, and various murals and paintings that are there, so which has a lot of Indian content and stories and cultural influence. So that is one book which is coming out. I think in a couple of months we will see it with us. And the second is Buddhism. Again, it is written by one Chinese academician, a quite famous academician. And here again, so we are talking about cultural linkages between India and China in Hindi. So these two translations. And then there is one book, it is in fact a course book, for our MS students. It is on classical Chinese literature. It is of history and literature, which has been translated by one of Chinese professor. I wrote in Chinese, and Chinese professor translated into English.
Oh.
So she said that this is a wonderful book, and in India, in fact, it's the first book written by an Indian scholar.
Chinese.
Yeah, in Chinese, on China, which covers China's history and literary, genres and trends and writers also in last 2,000 years of China's history. So that is coming out in English, perhaps also in a couple of months. So these are the books in the pipelines, at least 5, 6. Since I'm on sabbatical leave right now, my leave is coming to an end in month of June. So I hope by June I finish most of the pending backlog I have.
Last question, sir. As India's foremost sinologist who have been studying China since last 3 decades, what would be your 1, 2, or 3 advices to Indian policymakers, Indian students on China? What would be your advice? Yeah.
I think for policymakers, my suggestion would be, you exude the confidence of a big nation. India is a big country, big market. You should have that kind of confidence and engage China with that confidence. That is important. Don't disengage from China. Engage with that kind of confidence and engage it at all levels, right? Whether it is political, diplomacy, culture, trade, every level, So don't lose your strategic autonomy. That would be my advice to a policymaker. Yes, exude that confidence that you are not a minnow, you are a big power, and that is the crux of it. And for students, I think they should study Chinese. I think Chinese as a language, as a career also, it will give you, many options because China is the rising power and India is, ascending power. Therefore, both of them, they have to engage. And this is going to be one of the very, very consequential relationship in the 21st century. This we have to remember. Therefore, we have to understand China more. We have to know China more. And we have to learn Chinese more. So that is my advice to the Indian students.
And one for the political establishment, sir.
Political establishment and policy making is the same thing, right? Political establishment.
To pave way for all these things that we discussed, Deepak.
Be pragmatic, deal with China with seriousness, and be prepared. So do your homework first, right? And take lessons from our maybe mistakes in the history. So we should not be repeating those mistakes, and of course we should be caring about our national interest, and then engaging countries, irrespective of China or any other country, with that intent in mind.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you
It
for.
was a pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
So with this, we conclude the second episode of the Randomness Pod. I hope you enjoyed it. India-China relationship is one of the most fascinating yet complex geopolitical hostilities or relations, as we may call it. And today, I tried my best to uncover it, decode it with the best in business, Professor B.R. Deepak. So thank you once again, sir, for giving us your precious time. If you like it, share, subscribe. You want to?
No, I mean, Shashank has done a lot of homework in preparing these questions. So though I think we discussed it quite freely, we didn't follow the format. I hope you like it and do subscribe the channel.
Thanks a lot. Sayonara. Yeah. Or how do we say it in Chinese? Sayonara.
再见. 再见.
再见.
Yeah.